Now that we know the elements, or that we are reminded of the elements of a linear function, we want to now be able to graph those elements. So one thing that we want to be able to do is looking either at an equation or at elements, be able to graph that line. So when we look at the equation of a line, typically, and we'll look at equations here in a little bit more, but typically we're going to see this y equals mx plus b. Hopefully we have seen this before. When we look at this, remembering the elements that we just talked about, I can see these elements here. I can see that the slope is there, and I can see that the y-intercept is there. Now remember, the slope is how we're going to move from one point to the next, and the y-intercept is where we would be on the y-axis. So I'm going to use both of those things to help me graph a line. Right? So the first thing that we're going to do, we're actually going to start with our y-intercept. We're going to put that y-intercept on the y-axis. So we're going to begin with the b. Then from that point, we're going to move however the slope says. So if my slope is 5/2, that means from that y-intercept, I'm going to go up 5 because it's positive, and to the right 2. If that slope was a negative, let's say -4/7, I would go down 4, right 7. So I'm always going to the right. If it's positive, I would go up. If it's negative, I would go down. So let's look at a couple examples here. Let's say that my first line is y equals 2/3 x plus 5, right? So the first thing that I want to do is I want to identify the pieces that I have. So my y-intercept is 5. That means I'm going to begin on the y-axis at 5. So I'm going to put a dot right there on the y-axis. Then I want to look at this slope. I want to talk about how is the slope moving. Well, it's positive, so that means it's going to go up 2, always to the right. So it's going to go right 3. So from this point at 5, I'm going to go up 2, right 3. And that's where my next point would be. Now remember, another thing we said about slope is that it's constant. It's a constant rate of change. So that means I can continue that same pattern, up 2, right 3. Okay, now you notice, I'm at the edge of the graph. I can't go anywhere. I can take that same pattern and go backwards. So I could go from this point, I could backtrack 3 and go down 2, and I would find another point. I could backtrack 3, go down 2, and find another point. So I can see this pattern that we have will allow me to connect those dots and create my line. Okay, so let's try another one. See if we've really got what's going on here. So let's try y equals -4/3 x minus 2. Okay. So we're going to start off, we're going to identify the y-intercept is going to be at -2. So I'm going to go to the y-axis at -2, and I'm going to put a dot. Right? Then my slope says since it's negative, it's going to go down 4, always to the right. So right 3. Okay, so from this point, I'm going to go down 4, right 3, down 4, right 3. And again, since I'm off the page here, or off the graph, I could go in the opposite direction. I could backtrack, so I could go up 4, right 3, up 4, right 3. Okay? And then I can graph that line. So hopefully we now remember how to graph a line.